So how are we going to do this? Oh, here we go. How about if we start out with the worst homework problem ever? Okay? So here's what the homework problem looks like. Take the 15 bits of customer data records that you have and sort them. Each individual field, and there's what, 10 fields? Sort each one of them in ascending order, one by one. So how would you go about doing that?
Ascending order based on what? Like
On the field. So what's the first field that you have? Unpack the customer record, what's it? Last name, thank you very much, last name. So you have to sort that based on ascending, so basically alphabetically, right?
Yeah.
Cool, so you got that done. What would you do next? First name is this next one, that is exactly correct. And then what would you do after that? Well, then let's do it. Let's stop talking about it and let's just get doing it. That is exactly correct. We are sorting it 11 different times. That's why it is the worst homework problem ever. I determined you had too much time. You're sitting around doing stupid zombie stuff, and I said, well, hell. All right. So we have a little program here already. Let's go ahead and run it and see what we got. Woohoo! So all it does. So what do? So currently, the program that we have just prints out all the record fields. That's no big deal whatsoever, right? 0 is the last name, 1 is the first name, second, okay? And then we use our little bubble sort thing to print out a lovely bubble sorted list of last names. So now what do we have to do? We have to sort it by what? First name. All right, so we got to come back here. Hang on. And this shouldn't be that hard to do, right? So we grab the bubble sort stuff. And we grab the stuff that prints out what we bubble sorted. We stick it in there. And then, let's see, we're bubble sorting based on what? We'll sort at location 0. So that has to go to 1. And then it has to go to 1 over there. And then down here where we print stuff out, it has to go to 1. And it's not the last name, it's our first name. Cool. So we should just go ahead and run this again, right? Not talking about being intellectually stimulating. All right, so here we have sorted by last name, and now we have sorted by first name. What? Addison, Betty, Brian, Kenny, Dalton, Edwin. Fantastic. Success? Okay, now what do we have to sort by? So we go back. And what do we do? We just go ahead and we copy our bubble sort in our little printing thing. And then we can just go ahead and put it there. And now, let's see, so we did it by 1 last time, so now we do it by 2. Actually, all this movie down like that won't work. Look at me, it's not that quicker. Okay. All right, so we had last name, first name, middle initial. Okay. All right. So we got middle. Are we good? So now what do we do? Right. Last time we printed out. Looks like it's address. All right. Address, so it is. All right. So we highlight a little bubble sort. So that's 3. And that's 3. And that's 3. So that address. Let's hit run. Woohoo! So we did my initials, and then we did my, sorted by address name, which is basically like a house number and the number series and stuff like that. All right, looks like you did it correctly, right? So we've done what, like 4? We got how many more to do? 6. And I'm bored. I'm bored. This isn't very boring. But you get the gist of how we're doing it, right? go in, we grab the code, we stick the code, make a couple changes to it, grab the code, stick the code. All right. Worst homework ever. All right. I mean, it can be done, there's no question about that whatsoever, but as far as like emotional fulfillment, not really happening. But perhaps we can come back to it. But if you thought this one was bad, how about this one? Second worst homework ever. All right, great. So you got the first one done. Now what I want you to do is go back and reverse sort all of them. So put them in reverse alphabetical order. So what are you going to have to do? Like write a whole new program?
Sort it, ascending, and then just reverse the printout?
Like turn it upside down?
Yeah.
You could, but then it would be an upside down printout. So you have to change the code, right?
In the whole sort, isn't there a thing like greater than or less than, just off the...
Seems like you can do that. That's exactly right. Now, how many sorts have you done by the time we got done with homework number 1? How many elements are there in a patient record? I think. Is there 11? Damn. Well, who knows? I have no idea if this together. But yes, okay. All right, so we'll say 11 fields. So we did that cut and paste thing, let's say 11 times, right? So now to do homework number 2, how many changes are we going to have to make? 11, right? And we're going to have to get it right, too, right? We're going to have to go find all of those greater than signs and switch them all to less than signs or vice versa, whatever the heck it is, right? So is this doable? It sure is, yes. Of course, we have a record with like 100,000 fields to it. Pencil some time out, right? All right, so this is all doable stuff, but can we agree that this is a pain in the butt?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Then let's go with that. All right, then let's just ponder this. We'll just ponder this for now. We'll move on to other stuff, and maybe we'll come back to those or not. Poof. All right, so you have a problem. You're running a very successful ice cream store. Congratulations. Who knew that Lakeland needed to have an ice cream store? But congratulations, you discovered that need and you're fulfilling it. Turns out that creating an ice cream cone is a 3-step delicious process. Okay? Step number 1, select the flavor of the ice cream. Okay? Step number 2, construct the cone. And step number 3, add the toppings to the ice cream. Are you hungry yet? That's the whole purpose of this. Okay? As the store owner, we have 2 pressing problems. The first one is consistent quality. Always build the ice cream cone the same way. And the second one is minimizing training time. We've got a lot of turnover in our staff. Okay? We get new people coming on board, and we have to teach them that there's 3 steps to the process. Of course, nothing ever stops at 3, right? It always gets a little bit more complicated. So let's talk about selecting a flavor of the ice cream. Number 1, we have to check our inventory. Would you like chocolate? We don't have chocolate. Would you like vanilla? We don't have vanilla. Would you like strawberry? We don't have vanilla. Okay, we don't have strawberry. We just have coffee. You want coffee? That's all we got, right? Okay, whatever. Okay. Number 2, we have to separate ice cream from yogurt. What do you want? You want ice cream or you want yogurt? You cannot have both of them. Okay? Make your decision. Okay? And then we gotta get the user selection. Make a decision. Stop standing around, pick something and move on, right? Okay. Then we have to construct a cone. You've got your waffle cone, you got your sugar cone, you got your regular cone. Make up your mind. What do you want? Okay? Okay, and then we have to determine the number of scoops. Are you going to get number 1 scoop, number 2 scoop, number 3 scoop, or are you just going to go crazy and we're just going to put way too much on there for you? Whatever. It's all good. And then, of course, we're talking about toppings. Check our inventory for available flavors. Separate into regular and premium toppings. Would you like bacon bits on that? Fantastic. Now, it's over. We're good to go with that. Okay? Then get the user selection and actually go ahead and put it on the cone. Okay? Bam! We're good to go. You never knew it was so difficult building an ice cream cone, did you? Well, now you do. Ah. Okay. So, training's gonna be a pain in the butt. Why? Because you're a new employee. Now I'm going to tell you about these 8 different steps. Check inventory for available flavors. Separate ice cream from yogurt. Get the user selection. Select the cone type, waffle, sugar, or regular. Determine number of scoops. 1, 2, 3 are crazy. Check inventory for available flavors. Separate to regular and premium toppings, and get the user selection. Bam! Everybody's got to be trained on that, right? Well, okay, that's cool. So I'm just 8. You've got a counter. People come up and they order. You go through your 8 items and you're done, right? I mean, it's a pain, but it can be doable. Yeah, if you were running a small-scale operation, it's doable, but you're not. You're running the premier ice cream outlet in Lakeland, which means what? Oh, you've got a drive-through. You have to run through all 8 of them. You've got an online ordering system that you have to run through all 8 of them. You've got a walk-up ordering system that you have to run through all 8. And of course, phone and ice cream orders, right? You've got all 8 of these all over the place, man. You've got a lot of stuff going on. You got a lot of training to do. You got a lot of stuff to keep track of. This ice cream stuff's starting to turn out to be sort of a pain in the teeth, right? Sorry, do we have another way to place orders? In another class, they did select home delivery. Oh, this is what your ice cream looked like at the shop. Didn't quite make the trip. Okay. There has to be a better way to make an ice cream cone. Okay. So in Python, function packages are basically how we do this stuff. Okay, we take a group of functions, a group of statements, we put them together, and we call it a function. It's just a chunk of code stuck together. We'll give it a name, and that's what we call a function. Okay. The package of computation consists of multiple steps into a form that can be easily understood and, oh, here it comes, reused. Selecting the flavor of the ice cream, constructing the cone, and adding toppings are all great candidates for Python functions. Okay, try to get this. A function is a sequence of instructions with a name. You guys have already written sequences of instructions. You just haven't given it a name. You gave a name to your stuff that you did, poof, that would be your function. Okay? You call a function in order to get it to do what its instructions are there for. For example, if we have a program statement designed to round a number, we can say variable price equals round of 6.8275, comma 2, assuming that this is the number of positions we want to round to. You call the routine, it goes off and does a bunch of work. The result of that rounding comes and it gets stored in price. That's all there is to it. Just a handy little bit of code that we call over and over and over again. So how would this actually work? So we say price equals round 6.8275, comma 2. We call it, poof, we pass 6.8275 and the number 2 to round. Here's round. Round comes along and computes 6.8275 rounded to 2 decimals, to 2 digits, which would be 6.82. 6.83. We return 6.83 to the caller, which then gets stuck in price. Poof. That's it. I'm not really talking about rocket science here. Now, the cool thing about functions is that we can send as many variables into the function that we want. We can send 1, or we can send 100, or we can do whatever we want. However, functions can only return one value. So why bother with this new function stuff? What's the benefit in it for me? Number 1, reusability. Code up a function once and you're done with it. You don't have to keep writing that code in your code over and over again. Remember how we did the worst homework in the world? Copy, copy, copy. It worked, right? But man, one thing about and if we made a change to it, we had to go back and change it every place that we had it, right? One thing in the butt. Single function is often used in several different programs. Ooh, no, that gets interesting. So if I'm going to make a really cool function to do something in my program, and somebody else says, hey, I have to do the same thing, we can just give them the function, right? They don't need our whole program, just that particular function. And secondly, abstraction, which means you don't have to be so smart. I mean, I'll always sign up for that one. So basically, if somebody comes up with a really cool routine that does something, and you know, here's the inputs and here's the output that come out of it, that's all you need to know. If he's using black hole worm technology to transform it into, I don't care. He can be doing it however he wants. I don't have to understand how he does what he does. Okay? I just have to understand if I give you this, you give me this. Cool. I'll take your code and I'll use it. Okay? How to create a function? When writing a function, you need to pick a name for the function. We're going to call it our select flavor. Okay? You have to define a variable for each argument. In this case, our argument will be yogurt. Okay? These variables are called the parameter variables. Put all this information together along with the magic word def, okay, and we'll form the first line of the function's definition. Def, select flavor, name, yogurt, colon. That's it. First line of the function. It says, hey, everything that comes after this is going to be part of this select flavor function. This line is called the header of the function. Got it. After the header comes the body, of course. Got it. So the body contains the statements that are executed when the function is called. In our case, list of flavors equals check inventory, while flavors and list of flavors print out the list of flavors. If it's yogurt, wow, look, it's a Boolean variable. How cool is that? Okay. Selection is equals to input. Please enter the flavor of the yogurt that you like. Else, selection input please enter the flavor of ice cream. We'd like to have food. Okay? Seems like a perfectly good body of a function. Okay? Only thing we have left is actually to return a value. Well, good news. We use the return statement. Return, and we put a variable name. And that's the value that's going to be handed back to whoever called this particular function. 1, 2, 3. So we've got a header, we've got a body, we've got a return statement. Bam! That's a function in a nutshell. So, what does our select flavor thing look like in the end? Def, select flavor, yogurt, colon. List of flavors, check inventory. While flavor is the list of flavors, print list of flavors. If yogurt equals 1, select input, enter yogurt. Else, select input, please enter ice cream. And then down here, return selection. Poof, and back it goes. A complete working function for our ice cream shop. Function is a compound statement, which requires the statements and the value to be indexed to the same level. So that's a good point. So here's def. Everything, including the return, is then pushed over just a little bit. That make sense? That's how Python knows that this is all part of select, right? So we got the header, we talked about that. We got the name of the function, goes right there. We got any sort of parameters. Remember, it can be nothing, or it can be a whole bunch of parameters if you wanted. Then we've got the body of it, and of course we've got the return statement that sends the value back. Cool. That is exactly what a function is in a nutshell. Okay. Interesting thing about functions, it turns out that when you're telling Python about your functions, the order in which you tell it does matter. So here's what. You have to tell Python about the function before you use the function. Okay, define select flavor, or something like that. Later on, I'm going to call select flavor. Okay, that's great. Now what you don't want to do is call select flavor and then later on tell Python about it. The reason that this rule exists is because remember, Python is what we call an interpreted language, which means it doesn't pre-compile your stuff. Okay? If it compiled your stuff, it would know where everything was before it started running it. Since it's interpreted, it runs your program, which means it has to figure out what the select flavor is long before you actually call it. Otherwise it gets confused. If I call select flavor here, it's never seen select flavor. It's got no freaking clue what you're talking about because it hasn't reached this point in your program yet. So remember, you always have to define your functions before you actually call it. Now, right after I tell you that, I tell you that there's one case where things get weird. Just telling you this sort of by the way. It turns out that if you call a function from within another function, you can have actually the function that's being called occur later. The reason sort of is because Python's looking at it, but it's not actually executing it, right? So it's just sort of remembering how things look. So here we have C equals B of 4. Well, it turns out B is defined down here after this function A. And that's okay. Python doesn't have a problem with that. But in all other cases, you've got to make sure you define it beforehand. Okay? You can do some other weirdness. Some people, when they're writing their Python stuff, like to have just a single statement for their code where they call a routine called main, and then they put everything in their main code. Right? So they turn their entire Python program into functions. It's all functions, functions, functions. You can do that, it's really just a matter of programming style. Alright, let's go back and revisit the worst homework ever, shall we? Now that we're all like function smart. So when we run our program, all it does is print out that. We're pretty familiar with that. However, we've made some important changes to our program. So let's take a look at what those are. So we took our mobile sort code and we pushed it all over just a little bit. Okay? Then up the top we put def, bubble sort, sort index, and colon. And what did we do then? We went into the code here. Sort index and sort index. Those are the two changes we made. Remember when we were doing the worst homework ever? We were going here and changing the index. First it was 0, then it was 1, then it was 2. So this points to which field you're sorting on. Okay? So now what we're doing is we're passing into our routine which field we want to sort on. Alright, that sounds pretty cool stuff. Now there's another function call that we have way up here, just one of them. We have another routine called def print patients, print index and field name. We also have something called global patients. We'll talk about that one later on. But so we go down here, print patients index, okay, and print index, okay. So what we're doing is we're actually printing out everything. But we're saying what the field name is, first name, last name, middle initial, all that sort of stuff like that, and then we're actually printing the index that we passed in. So we've got two functions, so it should be pretty easy to do this stuff now. Let's see if we get this right. So I seem to recall the first thing that we wanted to sort out was like last name, right? So bubble sort on field 0, right? And then print patients 0 and last.
Attention, please. The Mazda Motorsports program will begin in the Alamagna immediately. Attention, please. The Mazda Motorsports program will begin in the Alamagna immediately.
All right. Well, first off, the Mazda sports program. Turns out the car runs on diesel. Diesel's been made from like race fuels, and they actually compete in like real races, and they do actually a pretty good job. Sort of the whole Mazda presentation in just a nutshell. So there you go. All right. So what we did here is we said bubble sort using an index of 0, and the very first index is what in our patient record? What field is that? That's the last name, right? Okay. And then we call our print patients routine with the index of 0, which is the last name, and then the phrase last name, so it prints it out. So let's give it a shot and see what it looks like. Woohoo! List of patients sorted by last name. Does this look like it's sorted by last name? Okay, so we know what we had to do last time to now do it by first name. We had to grab the code, copy the code, and had to make 3 changes, right? So let's see if there's a simpler way to do it now that we have these really cool functions. Bubble sort on field 1, and then print patients on field 1, and we would say first name, right? Woohoo! So we got our last name, yay. Now we got print list of patients sorted by first name, put a space there, and then poof. Well, that worked out pretty well. And all we had to do is add 2 lines of code, right? That's so cool. Our function's your friend. That functions are your friend, okay? And we could go on like another 8 or 9 times. We would have only added now. When we went to the worst homework in the world, number 2, we'd have to make a change, right? Mr. Wrigley, what change would we have to make? Exactly. And how many places would we have to change that? 1 time, right?
On this case.
In this case, we don't have to change it in our routine, in our function, the bubble sort function, right? And then every time we called it, it would operate correctly. Is that correct? Wow. So function sorters seem to be powerful, right? Powerful functions, right? All right, so you get the gist of it, right? And God's honest truth, the world is made up of functions. When you're writing code, okay, you will use functions like there's no tomorrow. Anytime you find a piece of code that you will call again and again, maybe with some different input variables, okay? And our problems are, bam, you should be thinking, that would make a great function. That would make a great function, okay? What's really cool is in homework number 3, you got opportunities to write functions. Woo! Does that feel right? Yes. Excellent. That is wonderful. It takes so little to fill you with real stuff. All right, so what's in your Python toolbox now? Well, we got all these things, and look, a brand new addition. Now you got functions. How cool is that? That toolbox is getting done full up, isn't it? You have to get you a bigger toolbox. All right. So what did we cover today? We covered functions. Whatever shall we cover next time? Wait, there's more. Yes, there's more to functions, but we'll cover that next time. You got enough fun on that. All right, you're done. Get out of here. I will see you next time.